Welcome gamers to Kerbal Space Program 2. This is the For Science update. This is version 0.2. It's still in early access, so the game is nowhere near finished. Is it playable? Yes it is. Is it fun? Yes it is. Is it perfect? No it's not. Is it far from perfect? Yes it is. Basically that's pretty a very quick summary. It is fun to play now, probably for the first time really, to be honest. I am having fun with it. There's still a lot of problems with the game, so just get used to saving a lot and reloading if something does go wrong. Not as much as there was. The problems now aren't as bad as what they used to be, but they're still there. Quality assurance is not really a thing with the developers of Kerbal Space Program 2, so just you sort of, and things take forever to be fixed. So that's sort of the negatives of the program. Should you buy the program yet? Oh, that's a really 50. It's a 50-50 for me at this stage. It's I enjoy it a lot now, but that's me, and I don't know if it's one of these things where it's not a. It's a frustrating game when things do go wrong, and there's also things in the game where it doesn't explain itself all that well. So hopefully this video, if you are new to the game, and I'm going to treat this video to explain things as if you've never played Kerbal Space Program 1, as if you're new to the game, you're a bit lost as to what to do and how to play it. The science update, the For Science update, will actually allow you now to play the game at a slower pace in terms of what you will be learning, which is fantastic, but there are still some bugs and there's a few little gotchas and things like that as well. So let's just get into it and start a new game. So start a new campaign, back up and through here. I'm going to be playing the exploration mode. If you play sandbox, everything is unlocked for you, so it can be a bit overwhelming for a new player, but exploration does ease you through, and it's done. I've got to say, the vision for what this is going to be is very, very good. The reality of what it is good. Not very good, but just good. There's a few things where the positioning of some of the components don't make a real lot of sense, and I'll show you that when we get into the actual, as in within the actual R&D tree, the tech tree. So I'll show you those when we get into it. Just things that I'm sort of, again, you're wondering, how did quality assurance let that get through? It doesn't make a lot of sense. It should be fairly simple for them to have put them in the right spots. But we'll get there, So campaign name, I'm just going to call this one Daz Tactic YouTube. And we'll call this one the Daz Tactic Kerbal, so the Daz Tactic Space Agency. There we go, the agency flag. Now at the moment we can't have mods easily placed in the game. You can, but it's a bit of tweaking to get things to work. So technically we don't really have mods. I'm just going to throw that one in there as my flag in this instance. Another problem with the game, once modding is simple, once it's got its own mod loader and mod system, I will actually then come back in and make some custom flags. So, but it's not really easy at this stage. Agency colors, again, is fine, except that there's no alpha channels, and yet there is in the game. So in one sense, you're better off just not worrying about this in this stage if you do want to use the transparency aspect of the colors, which I do like to use, and so I'll do that in game and show you that in game as well. But you can set them here if you so desire. Cadet orientation. This used to be either on or off by default, and either on or off, and you couldn't change it. It now looks like you can change it, but I'm just going to turn that one off in this instance, just so we don't have all these little sort of prompts all the time. They are good, and the tutorial in the game is very, very good now. So it was always pretty good, the tutorial, I've got to say, but it's now even better. Let's start the campaign. So let me show you around Kerbal Space Center, KSC. We have a few different things in through here. We have, when we highlight over it, the VAB, the Vehicle Assembly Building, back over through the other side over there. We have the Training Center, which is over here, which has got the tutorials in it. We have the R&D Center, which is now new. This is really I guess one of the prime features of this For Science update. The tracking station has been there. This is actually so you can track things in space, so you can have multiple craft doing different things. You've got mission control now as well. The mission control and the R&D centre certainly are major parts of the game now when you're playing this particular mode. And this is better than the way it was handled in KSP1, so better than in Kerbal Space Program, the original. So it does work better, and it's actually more fun to play than the original, I've got to say. You will sort of read a lot of comments from people saying it's a buggy mess and all this sort of stuff. Yes, there are bugs. Yes, it should be better. Yes, this is probably where the game should have been when it first launched into early access all those many, many months ago. This is sort of what I was expecting it to be like, to be honest, back then. So it will take time, but I think it's certainly heading in the right direction, just being honest about it. Launch pads down through here. This is one of the launch pads. You also have a few other little things in through here as well, like we can sort of have a bit of a look around. Over this way, we've got a big, long runway, so 2 runways, which we can sort of go and launch from. And we also then have, that's nothing. That's then back over through here we have some boat launch, like a dock in through that other side through there. This is launch pad 1. We then have launch pad 2, launch pad 3, launch pad 4, way out over in the distance. So there's a fair few different sorts of launch pads in the Kerbal Space Center. So let's talk about, let's start with R&D, because this is where we're going to be sort of then seeing what we can then go and do. So if we go to R&D, this is also really, really good in what the vision for this is. The execution leaves a little bit to be desired. So a little bit to be desired. It's still very good, but it's still good, but it's not extremely good. So the way it works is you've got different, almost eras. The first era of your science is going to be to do with Kerbin itself. So this is going to be sort of getting you into orbit, getting you to the moon and back, or the mun and back, things like this. It's going to be sort of close in around Kerbin to do all of these different bits and pieces. These don't cost very much, 10, 35 up to 180, 120, for example, 50s and through here. This is the amount of science you need to do to then start to unlock things. You get through this one pretty fast, which is good. The trouble with the loadout with this one so far is you have a very, very simple kit initially that will just sort of get you started, won't get you into orbit. I mean, technically you could get into orbit, but you can't reliably come back safely with what you actually have through here. Then you have the light launches back and through this other side as well, which then give you even more sort of ability to go higher up. This is where I start to have my problem, because there's a science group down through here that you have to go from here down to here and across to here to get survivability. And survivability has 2 of the things that you really need desperately as soon as you start to get to any sort of height. And one is the heat shield back in through here, which is sort of almost like a nice to have until you're really coming in at very, very high speed into the atmosphere. But the other one, which is really important, is this drogue chute, this radial mount drogue chute. Without this, you really can't do much at all. This should be, just even that alone should be part of this light launches. Things like this, I'm guessing at some point somebody will mod these sorts of things, because will the devs move that around and make it into a position where it's actually useful? I doubt it, to be honest. I don't have much faith in the responsiveness, to be honest, of the development of the game, which I hate saying that, but it's just, for me, it's just not. It's awkward what's happened. Sort of, the actual development of the game is just awkward, or even survivability ahead of aerodynamics. Like, aerodynamics is so unimportant in comparison to what we end up in through here. So this is a big, big mistake that they've actually made, in my opinion. And looking at this has been out for a few hours, and looking at the problems people are reporting in Steam, it's because they don't know how to use these, or they're not getting survivability before they start to do some of the other missions. And the other thing the game does a really poor job of explaining when you're actually playing it is why things are failing at the time. Because there's been so many bugs in the lead up to this release, and it's been so difficult to play the game up until now anyway. It is better now, but it's been so bad. I think the default position for players is to now think, oh, it's a bug, rather than there's something that I'm doing incorrectly. And so this is where this survivability really should be up front and center and should explain why certain things should be done a certain way. Let's just get started, and we'll get to this, and I'll explain. I'll give you a concrete example of what actually can happen here. In fact, I might even deviate off. I might do a few episodes of this particular playthrough, just so you can so we can talk about all those different little bits and pieces, just to maybe help you if you are new to the game. So that's the R&D Center. Another thing that's sort of weird about this particular one. Oh, by the way, this is screen number 1. Screen number 2 is, in fact, you can sort of do it from here and sort of drag it across, or just click on number 2. This then takes you further out, and now suddenly we're getting sort of into the hundreds in terms of science, and up to over 1,000 just to get modular launches. And so these become sort of where you can actually go with a lot more distance. You've got rovers, landing utilities, different payloads and things like this. So you're like tiny and large docking. So we're now getting into a fun aspect of playing Kerbal Space Program. And so this is actually a good one. Number 3, you're getting further and further away now. So long-range generation, deep space methalox, that's the fuel, for example. And so when you click on these things, you're going to get different sorts of engines, nuclear propulsion, different types of fuel tanks, stuff like this, which is really, really quite cool. And then finally, in version 4, in stage 4, then things are costing thousands upon thousands to be able to unlock these. So there's a lot to unlock. I really do like the progression system in this a lot. To be able to, you need to get power launches before you can then go to stage 2. You need to then get to modular launches before you can get to stage 3, etc., etc. So that's the only way to actually unlock it. And in the meantime, you then have to come back through and think, okay, well, what out of this slot do I actually want or need, and sort of work accordingly. It's beautifully done, I've got to say, in that aspect. Also, I really do like the fact that we don't have to marry the science in with an economy system. We can build whatever we like, which leads to a lot more creative solutions than what we used to have to do, which was to pay for absolutely everything that we did, which wasn't much fun in Kerbal Space Program 1. This doesn't have that constraint, which makes it feel fresh and fun when you actually are trying to solve one of the missions. Let's talk about the missions. Actually, one thing again through here. Normally, most of the screens actually will have pointers to where you go next, like the VAB or mission control, things like that. This doesn't have it, which is weird. You have to then go up into the hamburger, basically, and then just go down across, and in this case, we'll go to mission control. Mission control is where we pick up our missions, and so the first thing we have to do is to launch a rocket. If we click on this one, we then get the information. Launch a rocket from Kerbin and achieve an altitude of at least 10 kilometers. You can go to the mission briefing. This is just a lot of fluff from the director, where it just explains different things. Again, if you're new to the game, you may want to read it. It's interesting, I guess, in that sort of sense. I won't worry about it here because we're going to be bypassing this sort of stuff. So it just really a lot of hand-holding to sort of get this one done. We get 25 science as a reward from this one through here. So launch a rocket from Kerbin and achieve an altitude of at least 10 kilometres. Now we're going to ultimately get a little bit more than the 25 science. I love that. I love the little things in this game. By the way, this screen does change a bit over time as well, depending on when what's happening when you do come back into it. But we'll launch a rocket, and that's all we have to do. Get to 10 kilometres. That is the mission. We can track the missions as well. This will then sort of I'm not exactly sure what that one does, but why not? Let's just go and do that one. If we, again, see how we can now go out to the VAB or the R&D Centre. This is what I think the R&D Centre needs, is something like this down in the bottom corner. If we go to the VAB in this instance, and we're going to now build our first ship, and so we'll just explain what's going to be going on through there. I'll just go through the steps. It's very, very simple because we don't have a real lot to show in this instance. We've only got one pod. We've got 2 different fuel tanks. We've got only one engine. We've got what's called a decoupler, which I'll explain what this one is and why we use it. We have aerodynamics, and through here, this will just keep the ship stable. And we then have a parachute. And so the parachute is what has to sort of basically bring us down to ground. This is for our survivability, and so we start off typically you start off with a command pod. So we'll just go and add that one in. Now I did mention before about the color scheme. If you are wanting to change your color scheme, it's better to do it in game. So all you do is you just go to the color manager. You can apply it to the assembly or the part in this sort of case, but let's go and make this one with a bit more transparency. I don't know why the transparency slider isn't part of the original screen, but let's just go and do that one. And so we'll set them as the agency colors, and we can then just go and paint them on that particular device. It makes this bottom area a little bit shinier because we're now seeing the metal underneath it. And let's just go and create like a reddish orangey color as our main color. And in this case, I will have, this will be this is the accent. The base we still want to keep back down in that sort of bluey range. Let's just go back into here somewhere, bluey grey. And then the accent colour, we'll make this into the orange. And I won't make that very see-through, I'll make it a little bit see-through. And set as the agency colours, and then just paint onto that part. So we now actually have the colours. It's a little bit weak, isn't it? Just make it a little bit more orange, a little bit more bright orange. Set as agency colours and apply. That'll do. Okay, so this will be the colours that we then start to make use of from this point forward. Right, so just to quickly go through, if I middle mouse button, I can sort of look around, sort of rotate around the actual ship itself. If I scroll, I can scroll in and out. If I right click, I can then essentially still scroll around, but without actually changing. Like if I'm using the middle mouse button, I'm going up and down. If I'm just right clicking, I am just rotating or orbiting around the actual part that we sort of got centered in the viewfinder. So with this one through here, with survivability, the first thing we need to do is to get back to ground, or the last thing we need to do is to get back to ground. So start with a parachute. Always think in those sorts of terms. I think in terms of how are you going to get back safely. In this case, the parachute is all we actually have available. It's good enough for this, but it's not good enough for much else at this point in time. As I say, that for me is a bit of an issue with the game. We need to separate this when we come back down from the weight of the rest of the ship. Otherwise, the parachute won't be able to control that. So we'll just go and put a decoupler in there just to separate these two pieces. We'll now just go back into the fuel tanks. Let's just grab the small fuel tank in through here, the 200 litre fuel tank. I think it's a 200. The T200, this must be the T100, yeah. So this will be enough, I think, to get us up to 10 kilometres. And then we just go and grab the engine, throw that one on board. Now we don't have to put fins on this one, but if you are wanting to do that, just go down to aerodynamics, grab the stabilizer. Now if we place one on, that's not going to be, we'd have to then manually place a few more. I can press the X key, or I can press down through here, symmetry mode. And so I can just go 2, 3, 4. So I now have 4 of them. So I'll just go and place them there. Now I can tweak this as well. When I hover over these and then click on this in through here, it brings up the wing shape. So I can actually go and change aspects of this to then go and sort of change the overall look of it. So we can sort of really get something a fairly sort of unique and different. Anyway, I won't worry too much about showing that one in through there. So that will be our first launcher. Now we just have to get up to 10 kilometres. A few other little things to get in the habit of. Double check your staging. So the engine will fire in stage 1. Stage 2 will then separate, decouple from there. And stage 3 will be the popping of the parachute. And the other thing we can then have a look at is the engineer's report. One thing we're looking at through here is the thrust to weight ratio. Anything over 1 means that it will lift off. You really want to have this more around about the level, between say 2, 2.5 to 3, that sort of range. You don't need much more than that, because when it's this strong, if you're going at full throttle, you are going to ultimately end up the atmospheric drag will pull you backwards a little bit. So it won't be as efficient moving up towards space with this sort of thrust to weight ratio. There's a few things we can do with that. I might as well just show you that one now. If we go and right click on the engine itself, you can see there we've got a thrust limiter And so we could bring this one back down to say 50% or thereabouts, if I can do it. Can we double click that? No, we can't. 49%, let's just leave it there and just go back into the engineer's report. We now see it's 2.5. I'm actually happier with that. Even though I can still use the throttles using the control and shift keys to change the throttle of the actual engine, this just limits it. That's the maximum we can actually then go and do. So other things to consider is what's called the delta V. I like to just get a feel for what is going to do different things. And so a delta V of essentially 1,000 meters per second. This is the change in velocity for the craft. And so the change in velocity is going to be 1,000 meters per second overall. We'll just see what that gives us. Like to get, I know, for example, to get into orbit is around about, I think it's around about 3,000 that you require, thereabouts again. But you'll find these numbers out for yourself. Actually, I haven't looked to see if the trip planner is any better than it used to be. But in this case, the trip planner, one-way trip from Kerbal to, well, that's not going to show us, is it? So it doesn't give us the orbits as such. But if we went to, say, Kerbal to the Mun, in this case, you can see there, to get into Kerbal low orbit, it suggests a delta V of around about 3,400. And so we don't have anywhere near enough to get into orbit, but we have enough to get up to 10 kilometers, essentially. So the whole total, if we do the round trip from Kerbal all the way up to the Mun, getting to the surface, getting back off the surface. Actually, that's again, this is actually quite wrong because we don't need all these low orbits and stuff like this. So there's a few of these things we just don't require. Yeah, this is again, not really all that good, to be honest, with the way it sort of does work. One-way trip, it's a bit of a hybrid because we don't need to be going back into Kerbal orbit again. But anyway, it gives you a bit of a feel for that delta V for when you are doing things, for example, like getting into Mun. And you'll find that pretty much any of them will start off with this with 3,400 change in velocity to get into a low Kerbal orbit. So we'll just keep those sorts of numbers in mind. That'll make sense as we start to play the game. Now, other things we can change the name. So this will be the 10K, for example, whatever we want to call the vehicle. Not that it really matters that much. Let's just launch it and see how we go. We've got everything we needed on there. And we just press space and then start the countdown. You can see the delta V is only 876 in this instance. This is mainly because we are starting on this, like in atmosphere, where there's drag. So that will chop and change a little bit. And we'll just let it go straight up. Now, one thing we're going to be looking at is we're going to, the apoaps, the AP down through here, is sort of like how far, look, the ship is only 2,500 kilometres up above the ground, but it's already going to, even if I turn the engines off, it's actually going to reach it. So, I mean, we're nearly out anyway. Let's just let it go up as high as it wants to go. It's going to reach over 20 kilometres, ultimately. Now, when the engine's cut out, you can see this will start to drop backwards because of the atmospheric drag. So the drag in the atmosphere is pulling this one backwards. It did get up to over 28,000, but it is just slowing down because of this. Now, another thing we can sort of start to do is we've run out of fuel. There's no delta V left in the fuel tanks, so we can just press space and then activate this next one over through here. That then drops away. Another thing you'll notice is that we're actually locked in through here. The stability is on. The SAS control is actually on by default. In this case, I would suggest when you're coming back in for re-entry is to just press the T key or to click on this one through here to turn off the stability. It will then just it'll wobble into its best position. A bit like how water does when you actually drop it from a height, or when they sort of are making ball bearings and things, they just drop them into, like, from a long height into water. In this case, you'll see this will then just start to find its best place as it's still going up. It's nearly at the top. You can see there, this is the surface. It's now still going up a little bit. Actually, that's accelerating backwards now. So we're now coming back down again. So we're now sort of getting faster and faster. One thing you'll notice, I might as well just show you this one. We sort of got into the upper atmosphere, and not like this is the fully upper atmosphere, but in this case we're into fairly light air. But so our speed will increase a lot, as we start to sort of come back down towards Earth. In through here, the ground will come, of course, much faster up towards us. But one thing you will notice is this will actually end up, it will hit a certain limit and then not get any faster. And as we come down into the more soupy atmosphere, you can see there 325. As we come down into the deeper atmosphere, this is going to start going slower and slower because of the atmospheric drag. Here's that little wobble motion that I mentioned. With the stability off, it's just wobbling to find the best aerodynamic area for it to then sort of be coming back in on. Now, if it ends up usually around about 10 kilometers, if it's coming in too fast, that's when we're going to start to see heat effects. I don't think we'll see them on this one. We may, but usually it's around about now that you'll start to see them as we sort of start to come into the lower atmosphere. But you can see there it's not too bad. We've still got a parachute back and through this other side. I'm just going to now pop the parachute at around about, say, 7 kilometers. And it then just goes up through there. At this stage, this little parachute can support the pod, but not much more than the pod. Anything more than that, and it's just too much for it, and it actually won't deploy. And that's actually one of the bugs, is that it doesn't give you feedback on why it won't deploy. And so this is essentially just using a bit of drag while it comes down. It will actually deploy it at 1 kilometer. Up she goes, and that will then slow right down to under 10, usually around about 6. Which is about the speed that you want to be hitting the ground again with the actual parachutes. And so in this case, we're half a kilometre up, coming back down in towards Kerbal Space Center. You can sort of have a bit of a look around and take in all the sights. It's an awesome program like this. It really does look very, very good. And so while we've been up there, we've also been getting other science as well. Like Bill has been doing science as well. So we've actually been doing crew observations. So we come back in. We've only got 4. So we've got essentially four science extra that we're bringing back. Now there's a few other things we can ultimately do up there, but let's just leave it like this for now. I can speed up time by pressing the full stop like this, and I can slow it down again as well just by pressing the comma. So I can bring it back to there. I can actually pause it if I wanted to sort of have a look at other things and sort of check things out. You can pause the game by pressing the comma to bring it back down to that other sort of level. I'll just speed it up a little bit as we sort of come back down. It's one of the fuel tanks. All right, 30 meters up, 6 meters per second, which is nice and light. Okay, let's now hit the ground. The vessel is recoverable. We're going to get science, so let's just go and we'll press escape, or again the hamburger. Recover the vessel. Make sure your Kerbal Naut is on board. Actually, one thing we can do, just as a bit of something extra that you can actually go and do, I'll just press escape again. When you've sort of land nicely, it's easy to get in and out of the vessel. Let's just go and send Bill out. And we might as well just press the space. So he's now on the actual surface. And so Bill Kerman is going to have a bit of a wander around. Let's have a bit of a look over through here. And so he is actually in a different sort of biome. And again, we can sort of have a look at he's landed at the area. He's now taking a sample. So I just did a bit of science in through this other side. So there's an experiment in progress. All right, so he's now taken that particular sample as well, which is going to give us a little bit of extra. We're going to get a surface sample, essentially from this area of Kerbin. And so we have to return this to KSC, and we do that essentially by just going back into the ship, close that one off, board, press escape, and recover the vessel. Confirm. So that gives us 28 at this stage. We now just go back to the KSC, and we go back to mission control, and we report in and say, hey, we have done this mission. We'll submit our report. There we are. And so welcome back, blah, blah, blah. And that's all the bits and pieces there. So mission completed, launch a rocket. I love this graphics. These look really, really cool. Achieve an altitude of at least 10 kilometers. And so that's a nice simple way to do it. We get 25 for doing this particular mission, which means that with our sample, with the crew observation, when we got to 10 kilometers up, we end up with 53 science in total to spend. So that's the first thing we wanted to do. We now have another mission. We now need to get out of the atmosphere. The objective is to launch a rocket from Kerbal and achieve an altitude greater than 70 kilometers an hour. And so, 70 kilometers, which means that we're going to be coming back even faster. Now, we could still use the same sort of ship that we've currently got and just add more fuel to it. That would actually work to get us there. Or we can start to mix things up a little bit and do a few extra bits and pieces. And I think we'll do that. And this is where I do want to talk about the potential issues with the game. So, one of the potential issues with the game. There's a lot of them. I will say that one. So we'll get out of the atmosphere. We'll just go and... we'll go back to the the R&D centre at this stage. There's a few things in here that we want to be getting to then optimise our science. So by having the 53, by doing that sampling when we actually landed, we can go to the light launchers, grab that one. We have to do that one to unlock the rest of them down through here. We know we want to get survivability, so let's just go to aerodynamics, research that one. Survivability for 15, research that one. It leaves us with 18. The other one we want to get is environmental science, which will then give us the Science Junior, which allows us to do even more science. And so this will then sort of help us getting these numbers. You don't have to do it this way, but I'm just sort of showing you the suggested way that I would sort of take with it. So we'll do the research on that one. And so we only have to get to 70 kilometres up. With all of these different bits and pieces, we can now do that one. We've got 8 science left over. Can't buy anything with that one. So we'll just go back out to the VAB. And now we have a few extra little bits and pieces. So what we actually end up having through here is we actually have our tin can. So let's just go and throw this one back in there again. So it's still got the same start. We'd still want to get the parachute back in through here, so the small parachute, to bring that one back. But we now want to go and get science, extra science with this Science Junior. We don't have to do too much with this one. We just have it essentially attached to the actual craft itself. So that's just going to be attached through there. Now, the overall weight of this one has got like a... whereas the mass of 1 ton, whereas this one, the tin can, has actually got a mass less than that. So we've just doubled the weight, more than doubled the weight, and expecting this little parachute to work and do this one. Unfortunately, the game doesn't tell you that this parachute can't handle it, and so it feels like a bug when you try to get back with all of this stuff. Plus, another thing we do want to have is the heat shield as well, which is a third of a ton. So we've actually now got something that's over 2 tons in total weight in this particular stage. So this is now too much for the parachute to deploy. It will still bring it back down to ground, but it's just too much for deployment. And so we need to actually enhance the parachute, which is why we needed that survivability. And so the other thing we need is this drogue chute. So this is a parachute for the parachute. It sort of says in there. If we press the shift key, I don't think it'll tell us much. Safe velocity 247 meters per second. Anyway, just believe me, this is what we do need in this instance. That will then solve that problem. I don't know why the game doesn't actually tell you that this is what you need to do. I'm guessing that the quality assurance people, the testers, probably were just in such a habit of always putting that on that they didn't ever think what's going to happen to people who don't know to do that. And it's because of all the weight that we actually have. But it doesn't tell you. It says what the actual what the semi-deployment kilonewtons are and what the deployed kilonewtons are, but it doesn't actually tell you what the safe velocity is for it to go. But it doesn't give you like a full-on like the kilonewtons that of force from when something's actually sort of falling through the atmosphere. It doesn't explain it very well as to why that's not going to work. In fact, this one has got similar sorts of things, although it does actually have semi-deployed at 7.1 kilonewtons. I mean, it does. You just don't know. You don't know why it's. You don't know the specifics of it, which is I think a failing in the game at this stage. So hopefully they'll do something better about that. But with this, you will actually have deployment of parachutes. If you are playing the game and not getting the parachutes to deploy, this will be the reason. So you need to actually have the drogue chute and the small chute if you're putting extra weight on the craft. Okay, so then we've got the. So that we've got through there. We'll just go to the decoupler. That then at least gets the top section. So we're going to be able to do extra science in through here. I'm going to bring the science back. I won't try to won't try to offload it at this stage back to KSP. We will do that when we start to go further afield. Now, fuel. We need to get the fuel tanks. Now, I could start off with just with a fuel tank in through here, and then go to the engines. Let's just go to the engines now. We now actually have two different engines to look at, and what we want to look at here is the efficiency of the engine, particularly at atmosphere. And so if we hover over the first one, this is the Reliant, and so it actually has, and I've pressed the shift key, I can always unselect that one. I'll leave it on for now because there's a few little things in here that are useful to know. But what we're looking at through here is the ISP, or you'll see there maximum thrust 1 ATM and maximum thrust vacuum. So we want to see what the maximum, we want to look at the ISP 1 atmosphere and the ISP vacuum. Now we're not going to be operating this engine in the vacuum, we're going to be operating this engine on the surface or from the surface at 1 atmosphere. So this has got an ISP of 260, whereas the ISP of this one is 280. So this is actually better it's got better ISP. It has less thrust, a little bit less thrust, but it's pretty good in that sense. It also has an engine gimbal that you can see through there, where it's got a 3 degree, which means it's maneuverable, whereas this one is not maneuverable. So we have to do other things to maneuver this particular engine. But this is sort of where we are with the ISP. And this refers to the specific impulse. So as we sort of have a look across these ones, the bigger number means better. And so sometimes you're going to find that the atmospheric impulse, specific impulse, is going to be lower, with the vacuum specific impulse being higher, in which case they're more built for use in space. In this case, both numbers are higher on this second engine. And so even though it's got less thrust, it should be enough for what we actually need. Now, if I bring the engine back into here, and let's just go and place in those fins that we were looking at before as well. Just go back into aerodynamics. Still go to the extra small fin, that will be fine. XXX, just go up to 4, click. And so we've now just got stabilizing fins at the bottom through there. You can see there we've got a delta V of 1,200. That probably won't get us into orbit. Not into orbit, but it probably won't get us up to 70 kilometers like we saw there before with the trip planner when we were looking to go to the Mun. To get into orbit, it's 3,400, but that's not even half that. So I think we'll raise that a little bit. I mean, again, because it's not costing us anything in terms of economy, we might as well just go as put on what we need. I think just one of these smaller Methalox fuel tanks. We now have 1,600. That should be heaps to get us up over 70 kilometres. So that's nearly double what we had there before. Now remember, we're going to go more than double the distance than what we actually had, like a lot more. So this is actually working fairly well. I mean, if we were trying to get this thing into orbit, what we would then just keep on doing is, we know that we've got 3,400 as our target. We could just keep on adding in more and more fuel and try to get the delta V done that way. So this one is 2,800. Still not enough. We still need to get more in to keep on sort of working this one, like to get that one sort of functioning in that sort of sense. You can sort of get the feel for it anyway. This one possibly will also then, with the engineer's report, it still actually would take off. This one would actually take off. This is overkill for what we actually need, but you get close to getting into orbit. What about we throw one more tank in? Would that get into orbit? 3,200, it'd be very, very close. I mean, you wouldn't do it this way, but that's something you could actually go and do. Let's just go and grab the bottom two tanks again, throw them away, and just go and grab this one again. 1,600 is fine. So, of course, the more fuel that you put on, the more weight that you're pushing around as well, the less delta V because of that extra weight. So just that's sort of how it all sort of works. But this one will do what we need it to do. But the secret to this one is the drogue chute. Let's go and launch. It always starts off with the stabilizer on. I'm going to tilt this one slightly to the right, and by that we're going to be sort of flying across the ocean. So I'm just going to sort of be pushing this one a little bit over this way, just a little bit, and so that will actually then just mean that we're going to be flying out towards the ocean, which means if something goes wrong, we're at least going to be falling down into the actual ocean itself. Now I've set this one up. This one may be end up going a bit too fast. It's still not too bad actually, to be honest, with what we're doing. 17,000, 20,000. We're only 6,000 up. When we get into the higher level missions, I might sort of show you some other bits and pieces that we can then go and do. But it is a beautiful program. And once we get over, say, 75, I'm just going to press X. That's 80 actually. Well, I know that it's going to get drag as it comes back down, so we've only got a little bit left over. Actually, that we almost didn't make it, but this was just enough to get us to where we needed to go. We're definitely going to get up over the 70, even though we're only at 32 at this point in time. I'm just going to press space and ditch the bottom stage. Now, one little thing that we've got through here is we've got both parachutes are in this area. What I want to do is I want to go and separate those out into two different areas. So I'm just going to press a plus there. I want to make sure the top one is the second one that we deploy. I'm going to do that one manually. And so this one over through here, so the drogue chute will deploy next, and then this will deploy. If you are wanting to look at different parts like the drogue chute, and we're at 60,000 now, so we're nearly at 70,000. What we'll do is we'll just do a bit of science when we get up here as well, just with the crew reports. Might as well sort of go and grab all this, and then we'll just bring it back down to Kerbin. I think it's going to show us much. Yeah, it's okay. Okay, science reward available because we've now hit over the 70,000. Let's just go back in and do a crew observation. In fact, we can sort of see it through there. We can actually send these ones back down, but I won't bother doing it at this stage. So we've got the data that we're picking up through the Science Junior as well is helpful at this stage. We're going to be wanting to take this pretty much with us nearly everywhere that we go from this point forward. And we're still going up. We're nearly at the top. You'll see that this is at orbital speed, I can click on that one to get surface speed. And we'll see this one sort of dwindle all the way down, and then we'll sort of come back as we sort of start to as we hit the top. It will then sort of, we've got sideways motion as well. Actually, we'll do it that way, orbital speed. It will flick back anyway when it's required. Again, I'll just press T just to take the stabilizer off. So we're essentially in space at this point in time. We can certainly speed up time, so let's just go and do that now until we sort of get down to around say 40 kilometers up, and then we'll just come back and have a look and see what actually does go on there. You'll see there the speed is now increasing a lot. We're now hitting the atmosphere, the upper atmosphere. So we're sort of coming back in. And it's coming back in now. Okay, I'll just slow time down again. And so when I can actually pop this drogue chute out fairly safely. Maybe this is a bit too much, but at around about say 10 kilometers, we can certainly do it then. So I will do it that way. You can see that the surface speed is coming backwards a little bit. I'm going to pop the drogue chute. It is safe for the drogue chute. So it's now deployed and is starting to pull the actual speed right down. We're at 7 kilometers up, and I won't pop the other parachute until this is really, really within safety margins, which it actually is now. So I can actually have both chutes now sort of deployed. There we go. So we'll deploy the main chute. So we've got the main chute, the little drogue chute. The drogue chute will actually will actually deploy fairly soon. At around about 2,500. There it goes. Slow it down, right down, so that this big chute will then deploy at 1 kilometer. Because that's sort of what the defaults are for these chutes. You can change that as well, by the way, in your settings for the actual the parts. So at a kilometer, then they both deploy. This is the safe way to bring these back to Kerbin, just with the extra weight that we actually have through there. Again, the game doesn't really explain that, which is a failing. It's a failing of the game that it doesn't do that one. So down we come. Let's just speed up time now. I can only go a few different aspects of this one across. Now the ground is getting closer. I'll just stop it at around about, say, 50 kilometers. Now you'll see through here we're still coming in at a higher rate than what we were before because of the extra weight. So be aware of this. Like 8.6 is high-ish. Like this has got a factor of only 8, like a tolerance of 8. But we hit the water, which is very, very forgiving. So when you actually hit the water, that certainly does help. So now what we can do is we can go and, like I could actually take a surface sample from the water if I wanted to, but let's not bother doing that one. Let's just go across, click on this one, and recover the vessel. So different reports are being submitted. So we get some extra science. We're up to 92 after this particular mission. So all ticks in through that other side. That was some good flying with what actually happened through there. So we just go back into the Kerbal Space Center. And in this instance, we can go back to mission control. And we've now actually, this is still out of the atmosphere. So we can now say, hey, we've done here's our report. What do you think? Okay, are you back already? Yes, we are, and we've succeeded. So we're back in action, over and out. And so launch a rocket from Kerbin to achieve an altitude greater than 70 kilometers. That was the next one, and we got 50 science for that one. Awesome. We now got 142 with all the stuff that we've now done. So taking the Science Junior with us has given us a lot more science. So we can get through these fairly fast. And we don't have to do all the missions. The next one we have is a buoyancy test where we have to land a pod in a body of water in Kerbin, which is what we just did, but we still have to now go and do that one because we've now got the mission now, even though we just did it, and orbit Kerbin. So what I think I'll do is I think I'll actually do this mission, show you how to do the orbits, and come back and sort of take this one, and then we'll call this episode to a close. And I think I'll do some more as well after this as well. So I'll just keep on sort of playing this for a little bit longer until we maybe sort of land on the Mun and come back. So let's go and we can track these missions, for example, orbit Kerbin. I'll just track that mission, for example. Not that it really matters that much. And it does sort of show a little, actually I might as well do the buoyancy test as well. I'm not sure where these show up, these tracked ones. So R&D. We now have heaps to spend, so we can sort of think about what else we would like to get. And some of these would be useful. We don't really need any specialized decoupling. Will just give us a few other little sorts of separators and things as well. We do have basic decoupling in through here, this radial decoupler. That one there, there's nothing much of value there, but we're still going to be wanting to get it. Lights and utilities is nice. Let's just go and grab that one. I've got heaps. Power management is going to give me large solar panels. I've got small solar panels. I think that they came in, where was it? One of these other ones that we got, I think. I'll get the solid fuel boosters. We'll be wanting that one. Orbital rocketry, I might as well grab this one as well. They get the Terrier and then the big thumper, the big solid fuel thumper. Still got 77 to spend. I can't get this one now. Reaction control, this is sort of like allows us to maneuver, but we don't need that one just yet. Power management and struts. Struts is something we are going to need to get later on. Power management is where we get batteries. We're going to need this as well at some point, but let's just go to introductory construction. We'll grab that one. We've still got 67 actually. Specialized decoupling, let's go and grab that one as well. Still got 50, so I could actually grab even basic docking. Not that I need it, but we will be wanting it at some point. We don't really need those. Micro construction, we don't need those just yet. Light aviation, these are if we want to create planes, which I don't need to do with what we're doing. I think we just go power management. This is going to give us long-range probes and research miniaturization in through here. Actually, that's probably something I should have targeted. So let's just go that way. We've got 17 left over. Nothing else I can really afford. So that just gets me the next grouping of different things we can do. So let's actually build something now to go into orbit. So we'll just go back across into the VAB. All right, so we saw with our trip planner, when we did choose anything at all, like if I choose Gilly, it's still going to be 4300, sorry, so 3400 to of delta V to get into a low Kerbal orbit is sort of really what the allowance should then be. So it doesn't really matter what we choose into here. It will then always at least start off in that orbit. So we want to get to the orbit right now, and then we want to come back as well. So we just need a little bit just to push us back out of orbit, which is not, we hardly need anything at all for that. So let's think of it in reverse terms. We need to get up and essentially get close to being into orbit, and then just maneuver a little bit in orbit, and then come back to Earth. Or Kerbal. So let's just go and start with our pod. We now have probes unlocked. You can see we've got a lot more stuff now starting to come in. This is a nice way to be able to just ease into the game, and you don't have to do these missions. You can just give yourself a different mission to do whatever you want to be doing. But anyway, this is what we're going to be doing in this particular instance. And so in this case, we're going to set up exactly what we had there before. Parachute, so the extra small on top, the drogue chute off the side, because we're just going to send up exactly the same top area that we had before. So we're then just going to go back across to the science, grab the science junior, place that one underneath. Heat shield, because we are now going to actually probably get heat coming back in as we actually, so we're going to need survivability. So the speeds are going to be higher than what they were before. Other things we're going to be wanting to get through here is, well, decoupler. Actually, a few little things we could do now is we could start to radio this one back to Kerbal. So we could grab ourselves like an antenna. I can just grab that one. To sort of just target the way that these things might look, you can actually go in. This is actually selection tool. This is rotate and translate. So I can actually go and click on these things and click on a tool and just rotate it around. And so that's sort of now just being rotated. Now that didn't rotate. That's sort of more from the view. What I should do is actually rotate that one from within itself. And so if I, which way do I do this? Yeah, if I click on it again, I then get aligned to world or aligned to assembly. So if I align it to the assembly, it should. No, it's still going off in the angle. That's still wonky. I'm not sure why it's doing that. If I screwed this up, I think I'll start again. Just go back to the selection tool. Grab that one again. So we'll just go and place it there. Rotate. We do actually have assembly anchors and launch assemblies as well, but let's just go back into here. And so align to the assembly. Still not wanting to play, is it? That does not look right. I'm not sure why it's doing that. And aligning to the world is not really what we want either, although it does look as though it would be more effective. That does look better. I'll just leave it like this. Anyway, I'm just pointing it up a little bit. I'm just sort of showing you what you can then go and do with these. If you press the shift key, you can sort of get like finer control on what it's actually then going and doing. So you can sort of pull it back in there a little bit. So that's just going to be the aerial, which is just above the door hatch in this case. All right, other things we're going to be needing is power. We need to sort of get power on this thing. So not that we need it, but we might as well go and throw it in there. Now we have extra small and small. Small is going to be way too big for this particular craft. So I'm just going to go and place a whole lot of these around the outside edge. In fact, yeah, so if I just go into there, and if I press the X key, I'll just get 4, 5, 6. That way we're going to end up with power sort of taking, like whichever angle the sun is, or Kerbal, whatever the actual sun is in this thing, it will then sort of hit these power banks, and that will sort of allow us to then get power into our to be able to then feed the antenna and to be able to sort of send science back if required. So we may be able to milk a little bit more science this way. It's a good, again, it's just good to sort of start to understand what you can do. We want to then decouple from this particular portion of it. Now the heat may pull these things off. That's fine. It won't really matter that much. Let's just go now and start to look at our delta V. So if we start with the fuel tanks, we'll just go with we'll get, say, 2 small fuel tanks, Actually, what we might do is actually do this a bit differently. Let's get a maneuverable craft initially. So we're just going to go and place a medium tank in through this side, like a 200 litre tank. And we'll just go back to the engines because we now actually have this little Terrier engine. And what you'll see through here is the actual maximum thrust in a vacuum, which is where we're going to be using this one, is 60. And so the ISP in a vacuum is 335, which is going to be better than the other two engines. But it's also just, we don't need much thrust. So that's just going to be a small engine for when we're actually in space and in orbit. This one here, if we just press the shift key, we can see there it does actually have a 4-degree vectoring gimbal, so we can actually very easily maneuver the ship using that particular little engine as well. Now we need to get another stack decoupler back in through here. So we've got like a stack decoupler in through this other side, throw another one in there. That then keeps that portion hidden away. Now we've got a total delta V of that's just that little one there of 900. Now we need to get, say, maybe sort of like 3,600 would be viable. So let's just keep on going with that one through there. Go and grab, again, this was the better engine in terms of what we were doing. We've now got 2,400. We're still 1,000 off, so it's still not going to be quite what we want. Let's have a quick look at the engineer's report. And we're now under, the thrust to weight ratio is now under what we need. And so we're not powerful enough to really be able to take off anyway. But there's other things we can now go and do. And so what we can do through here is actually now start to build like using solid fuel boosters. Now we've got some big ones like this, for example, which is probably overkill for what we need. But we just want to get off the ground essentially, and a fair way up. So if we keep on looking at this delta V, we want the delta V to ultimately end up being, as I say, around about say 3,600 or more. Let's go and grab ourselves another decoupler. And so we've got these different radials. We'll just go and get the small decoupler. I'll put these down towards the bottom. Just press X again and just get, say, 4 of these. Just put these on an angle like this. And so I'm going to put more engines down the bottom here. And so I'm just going to go back into my solid fuel, like under engines, the solid fuel boosters. I'll just get a small, and I'm just going to go and place that one pretty much over the top of where we are through here. So it's just going to sit on the top there. Go and put those on. We now have a delta V of 3,600. It's just enough. It's just enough. So as long as we're good at being able to angle the ship, and which I think I'm going to show you how to do that, because you may want to put more on if this was the case. You may want to even go with 6 of them. We don't really need the aerodynamics on this thing, but I will still put that on as well. But in this case, we've got atmospheric drag hitting these big surfaces, so we're going to be wanting to go to aerodynamics, which is here, and we now have the nose cones. Just going to throw them on board, and we'll go back down to a slightly bigger stabilizer, a fair bit bigger in this case. It looks weird, but that's the way it looks. And so that will then do us, that will then give us a bit more stability. With 3,500, we're only just over. If you're concerned, just ditch this and just go and grab another fuel tank and place that one on. Now, if I go and grab even just another small one in here, for example, and throw that one into there, that's going to give me 3,700. Let's have a quick look and see if we can take off. The engineer's report is we have a thrust to weight ratio of 3 because of these solid fuel boosters. I hope that makes sense as to what we've actually just done there. But we now actually have, based on what the game is telling us we should be aiming for, we're over that amount with our delta V, total delta V in this bottom section. There's certain things we can turn on. Do we want to have the... I'll show you a few other little tricks and things that you can do through here. Now, at the moment, just these are going to be burning on their own, that first stage. If we go and open this one up, we have a delta V of 1,888 meters per second, and we have a different delta V in through here of 1,700 with this engine. Now, if we bring this engine down into this area, it means that they're both going to be firing in that particular area. Hang on, why is there 2 engines? That's right. This is the one at the top. The other engine at the top through here has got 900 odd, and so we are going to have to use this one just to finish off our orbit, but we're sort of close enough. Now I've got both of these now firing at that position. Let's go and ditch stage 3. So that's now down. We then decouple there to then expose this next engine, and then we eventually decouple there on our way back to Kerbal. So this is the sort of the way that we're doing it. So these are all now going to be ticked off. 3.8 is fairly high. I'm going to use this a bit more effectively to sort of do what we have to do. Yeah, the overall, like the delta V, we've got just enough, just more than enough than what we actually do require. Okay, so let's go and change this one to orbital, orbit craft, or whatever we want to call it. We can save these if we wanted to, but this is just going to be sort of like the start of what we need. Now we could also even put more fuel, power around this other side, but let's not worry about it. There's a few different things, and the other thing we want to do is have this one last. So I'm just going to go and add another aspect in through there and throw that one up into that top section, just so we've got that one last, that one second last, decouple. That stage through there, decouple, and then we've got essentially we then ditch all of these different bits and pieces once these are done. I think we're ready, so we'll just go to the launch. There we are, and ready to rock and roll. Now, one thing I can do is, because I know that I've got the solid fuel boosters, I'm going to make less use of my actual main engine and just use it. I'm going to press the control and bring the throttle down. So I either don't need it at all, or I can just have it on sort of like low, which means we're going to then be saving this fuel in here and for when we actually do need it. So I'll just leave it sort of around that sort of 20% mark. That's just using shift and control. If I press Z, it's full on. If I press X, it's full off. So those little numbers in through there, we'll just leave it in around there for starters. And that's just because it's so soupy in through here. Where I really want my speed is when we get up into this sort of area, which is why the solid fuel boosters are required. But the reason I'm using the engine a little bit is because of the gimbal engine, which I can then use to start to steer the ship around. I can't steer it with the solid fuel boosters. I hope that makes sense. So I don't need much in here just to get the steering. That's all I'm really using that bottom engine for. And I'm trying to conserve this part of the fuel. Let's get started. So the solid fuels, we don't have any, we can control the amount that they do burn, but in this case I'm sort of happy enough for them to do what they're wanting. So I'm just using the gimbal engine. You can see it gimbling away at the bottom there. I'm just pushing it over a little bit, not much, just a little bit on this line here. It's more efficient to go with the roll of the planet. So it's better to be sort of pushing out in this other direction. Now that's the solid fuels done. We'll now get rid of those, and now we'll ramp up this one again. So we're 11 kilometers up. We want to start to push this one right over now onto the 45. And just look at the Apo apps. I don't want the Apo apps to go too much. I'm probably going a little bit too fast. So let's just keep this one coming. Now the time to the Apo apps is also important. So I want to sort of look at this one. We're getting up to 56,000 Apo apps. We're still in this lower atmosphere. Still got a fair bit of fuel, but I want to be pushing this over. I may have already sort of pushed this out a bit too much. Let's just reduce this down, because I don't want to be going too much with the I've got a little bit of thrust in through here, but we're sort of getting up close to the 70,000 now, and I really want this one to be pushing across. The more I'm away from the direction, which is what that reticule there is, the less effective I actually am, or the less efficient I am. Now I've got 70. I need to get both numbers, both the periapsis, which is sort of like the lower point of the orbit, which is currently negative, which means it's crashing, and the apoapse. I need both of those to be between 70 and 130. I think it was. No, I think it was between 70 and 300. Anyway, I'm going to be aiming for 100. So we're just moving across. I'm also looking at this number here. I don't want this one to get too close or too far away. So 73 and through there. As I get closer and closer to this one, we're at 63, which means there's hardly any drag on the ship now. So we'll just sort of go this way, just get it sort of so it's sitting on the horizon. We're only 40 odd seconds away. If I start to increase this, it will then start to push out the time a little bit. It's going to push this one up as well. But I need to now start to make use of what I've got left in through here. So I've still got 900 delta V left in this particular engine. Let's just push this right on the horizon now, because we don't want this one going up too much. We don't want this one to get down to 0 if we can help it. So we might have to give it a big burst fairly soon. Now if I press the if I just pause here for a second and then press M, we can then have a bit of a look to see where we are. I like that they've done this, because what's actually happened here is we've actually taken off. This is what we're looking at before with the apoapse. So that is essentially the apoapse that that's where we're going to be at the top of our orbit. You can see the angle. We're coming in fairly sort of close with the actual angle itself. So that's the Kerbal apoapse, and then we actually have a crash into here. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to push this out. Now I can still actually show you on this screen. I can actually still keep on just using this gimbal to check what's going on and looking at these different numbers. So if I just press the full stop, and then I'm just going to get it going a bit faster, because I want to push that apoapse out. And you see that the periapsis is now coming back up. Now even if we go above this, it won't really matter as long as I'm pushing along this sort of line here. We can see that we've got the apoapsis at around 76. We've just gone past it, which means we're now technically coming back. I'm just going to push it up a little bit. Above that is the horizon line. This is now being pushed out, and we're now out of delta V. Let's just press M again, and we're just going to press space, and then we're just going to fire this engine. We leave that one behind, and we can just go back to the M again if we wanted to sort of just see it from this sort of angle. So we don't have anywhere near the thrust anymore. So we're now sort of behind the apoapse a little bit, sort of like in front of it a little bit. So we just want to keep on pushing to get a circular type orbit. Now hopefully we've got enough power to be able to do this. We don't want to be coming down too much. But this is actually now coming up fairly, and it'll come up fairly quickly. So we're still 74. We're actually 71 at this stage. Here we go, and periapsis is achieved. So we've actually now done what we needed to do. We've actually got our orbit. We've still got a little bit left over, so we haven't really left ourselves with very much to be able to get back. You can see there that I wasn't as efficient as what the trip planner is sort of saying, but that did get us into our orbit. Now this is the lowest point now coming up for the actual orbit itself. I'll do another video where we talk more about orbits and stuff like this, but this is all we had to do. We've actually now achieved the science. If we just go back into the experiments, we'll get different bits and pieces. If I start to transmit, I've only got 50 EC for my electricity, but if I start to transmit all of the data, it's going to require 96, and we're unfortunately in the dark side. Let's just speed up time. Now there's a few different things you can do in this particular screen. Let's just go around so we end up sort of zipping around this other side. And so I'm just going to go and time warp to that point, which is quite useful. So lack of stellar exposure. We've still got the full batteries though. Okay, time warp is limited. Okay, so this is fine. So we're actually now coming back around. If I press the M key again, we'll sort of see this is actually now, the sun is now shining. We can sort of rotate the ship around. We've got everything turned off. The engine has been turned off. So I can just use the WASD keys to sort of then move these solar panels so that they actually pick up a little bit more of what's actually going on. So anyway, that's sort of where we are with that one. So we are getting now solar coming back in. If we go back into the science, we can't actually do it just yet. I think we've got to be in visual distance, visual range of Kerbal Space Center. Let's just bring it back home with us in this case. So to bring this one down, we need to sort of try to plan where we can then go and end up dropping into some ocean. And so to do that, we've got a big lot of ocean in through here. There's KSP now in the darkness, but this is the best part of the ocean that we actually have coming up. Now that's the apoapse that we're going to be, actually there's the apoapse right there. And so I'm going to start to decelerate now, so we end up sort of doing different bits and pieces. I'm going to start to use these other I'm going to point the ship retrograde. Now, if I go back to here and press this one through here, it will then automatically press in the opposite direction of which the ship is, where the ship is actually going. Now, I can just manually do this. If I go back to M again, and what I want to do is I want to start to see it drop down. So I'm just going to start to burn from here. So I've just got a little bit of burning going on, and we'll start to see this periapsis will then start to come back up towards the planet. I don't want to go straight down because otherwise it's just going to be too hot. So I'm just going to start to sort of reduce this one. We've still got a fair bit of fuel, but we'll start to see the periapsis will now come up. Even at this, like at this stage, it will get back down, even though we're technically in orbit. But now we're going to start to sort of see things coming back up. Now, what I want it to do is I don't mind it targeting, say, for example, over in here somewhere, which you can see it's coming up that way, because we will slow down anyway. This will actually not end up being where it's pointing. This isn't taking into account the atmosphere. So let's leave it at around about here. I'm just going to press the X key. I've only got very, very small thrust on at this stage. But this will then get us to land somewhere in this ocean, which we then pick up extra science for. That'll do us. Okay, so I've now pressed X. And we're now going to start to... We won't have any drag yet, but when we come down below 70, we're going to start to sort of slow down a fair bit. Let's just go back into here. We no longer need... God, it's a beautiful program. It always blows my mind just how good it actually is. Now we're going to ditch this this particular area. We're going to use a stack decoupler at this point in time. We don't need the rest of this anymore. So that one now goes. So we're now coming back in with our heat shield, and we're now going to turn off the stabilization. Just by pressing T, there we go, and just let it sort of wobble its way through. This will burn up. Let's just speed up time a little bit, and we just watch the ground. Like once we get down, sort of around about 70,000 to 60,000, that will just mean that we are that we're sort of into the atmosphere. Well, under 70 means that we're technically in the atmosphere, but it's going to be very, very light. So we didn't actually send anything. We're still at the 50. This is a fair way off. We probably won't even see it when it starts to come back in. Now, technically, because I'm not below 70, I do have a few other speed settings that I can make use of, but I won't do that. Now, if we go back to M, we'll start to see this will now start to creep over this way as we hit the atmosphere. So we're just starting to hit the atmosphere now, but this will start to come up as we get deeper and deeper into the actual atmosphere. And we want to always come in on these sort of lowish angles. Because it does allow us, if I just go back into here, we'll start to see heat effects fairly soon. 47,000. We're starting to get into more and more deep atmosphere. I'll just go back down to single speed and just press M again. And we'll start to see this now is going to be coming closer and closer. We're going to get close to here, I think, by the time... Hopefully we don't end up on the land. We'll be okay if we do end up on the land, but it's but we should, as we come down, particularly as we get to around about 20,000, it will slow right down. You can see we're coming in at 2,000 meters per second, 2 kilometers per second, which is fairly high. But you can see it's now starting to come down. As we get down to 30,000, there's the heat effects. So we're now sort of getting the heat effects, which I love seeing this in the game. So we're getting sort of heat coming off the heat shield. So we definitely need the heat shield. Now, if we have other components or something like that, if these are popping out from outside the heat shield, they may overheat and be destroyed. We're at 20,000, 21,000. Our speed is coming down. Look at this. This is now very, very quickly coming back towards where we are. Yeah, so we will actually hit the water here. So we will hit the water. Well, we might as well just keep on watching what's happening through here. 17,000 from the ground. We're down to half the speed we were before, 1 kilometer per second, and really slowing down a lot. Now, we're going to get some atmospheric effects fairly soon as we sort of come deeper into the atmosphere. And so the next one we have is the drogue chute. Now, I could start to actually, I could pop the drogue chute even now. It should be okay. There we go. So the drogue chute can now just slow us right down. Even just when it's rippling along like this, it's going to slow us down dramatically. And you can see the angle that we've now changed. We're definitely coming into the ocean. So we're literally just dropping sort of straight down. And we're 7 kilometres up. Oh, it's safe for me to now pop the other parachute. So I might as well just pop both of them now. And so none of them have unfurled, but they're just going to be slowing the ship, or the craft right down, and we will actually end up in the ocean, which will be a bit more forgiving for all the componentry. There's a bit of a bug at the moment with the game where you can actually hit the water at any speed that you like and you'll survive, which is not good. It should be blowing up at certain speeds. There's a drogue chute going at 2.5 kilometres. At 1 kilometre, the main chute will then open and deploy. And it should be about now. There it goes. I hope this episode has been helpful just to sort of get you started in Kerbal Space Program 2. It's basically midday, looking at where the angle of the sun is. It's going to be directly above us. There it is. And so, this will now give us, we've only got 17 science at this stage, but again, we've now done pretty much an orbit, or we've achieved that the orbital, we didn't go all the way around, but essentially we can get into orbit just with this craft. It's a little bit finicky, like we have to have the right angles, and I really wasn't as efficient as I should have been, but we still got there nonetheless. Only just though. How far up are we? 400. I'll just speed up time. As we come back in, 200. And splashdown. There we go. So, return to recover the vessel. Confirm. So we landed in the water. That was one of the science things we had to do. Just go back to KSC. Go back to mission control. Buoyancy test. Submit our report on that one. You floated. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Mission complete. Land a pod in a body of water on Kerbin. 40 science for that one. Thanks, science. And orbit Kerbin. We did that one as well. We needed to establish an orbit around Kerbin with an apoapsis less than 300 kilometres and a periapsis greater than 70 kilometres, which is what we did. So we'll submit that one and continue. Gotcha. And done. Yep, there we go. Science collected 75. That was a good one. So that's now given us more. We've got a few extra little things, which I think we'll do in the next episode. So thanks for watching, guys. I will leave it here. We have 132 to spend, which I sort of know in my head what I want to be looking, but there's a few little things that we do need to be looking at. We're now going to be looking at getting to the Mun in the next phase. Thanks for watching. I will catch you then.